So can you introduce us to our segment of the close-up?
Sure. My name is Kirya Traber, and I live in Brooklyn, and I'm a theater artist and a cultural worker.
When did you first know you wanted to become an actor / performer?
I took the roundabout long way to acting specifically, and performing as well. I started as a writer, actually, and that was in middle school. And then high school, I really started taking myself seriously around like sophomore, junior year. And then somebody was like, have you heard of this thing called performance poetry or slam poetry? And I was like, whoa! And I eased my way into that. And then I did that for some years. And then after about 8 years of that, I realized that I was really, really interested in theater. But it took a long time to sort of realize what I was really excited about. When I'm an actor, sometimes I'm acting in other people's work and I'm just showing up to be like, give me the text and I'm ready to go. But sometimes it's something I've written myself or that I've collaborated on.
So can you go in more depth of what you do?
Sure. So I call myself, it actually depends on the day, but theater artist is a good word, is a good term, because theater, like I said, it involves so many different things. There's a lot one can do in theater, and that way I don't have to narrow it down. And then I also call myself a cultural worker. And that means that when I'm working in my art, I'm also thinking about building with community and the process of making art for the purpose of social movement or social justice. So that could be, if I quit theater tomorrow and decided to paint, I still would be a cultural worker. But I am a theater artist. I was trained in acting. I have my MFA. And as I said, from early on, I started writing. I started with fiction, and then I moved to poetry, and then into writing plays. And now, like I said, I write theater. I dabble a little bit in nonfiction, and I'm thinking about more fiction and creative nonfiction, though I haven't in a long time.
No, playwriting and cultural, the other...
Cultural work.
Yeah, cultural is different. So how did you get into cultural work?
Yeah, well, that was always a part of my work, too. So, my path, like I said, my path is kind of wandery,
Yeah.
So when I said that I started to write in middle school and high school, it was, for me, out of a necessity, because I was having a really hard time.
So what was the scariest part of performing?
What's funny is that I took to performing right away. It was surprising to me how not scary it was. I think it was, really public speaking first, before it was actual movement and stuff like that. And it was so fun. I could make people laugh. Everybody was looking at me in a good way, as opposed to everybody looking at me in a bad way where they were judging me. And so it felt really powerful, actually. And from then I just started to love performance.
So you felt comfortable. So what advice do you have for your fellow writers?
It's so broad. For any writer, any kind of advice? Mm-hmm. I guess right now I'm thinking a lot about reminding myself, so this is advice for me, how valuable it is to tell the stories that I want to tell. Even if I think that they might be hard for other people to understand or relate to because of my race or my sexuality or my gender, that those stories, I started writing as a poet about myself to begin with. But even now, 12 years into my career, I'm having to remember, oh yeah, I still get to tell my story on my terms. My stories are still some of the most important stories, and they need to be out there. And I have to remind myself that all the time.
So how does that change you as a person? Shape you into who you are today?
Yeah, it helps me to walk through this world, to, walk with pride, to know that my story has, one, when I tell my story, that it has resonance with other people, so I'm not alone. Two, that I have dignity, that my story, when I tell it in my own words and I I see it on the page or I hear it out loud, I'm reminded of how much dignity there is in my life and in the people around me, and that we deserve to take up space, we deserve to exist and to be honored and celebrated.
And also, last question, was your childhood a big part of your reason for becoming a performer? And if so, what was the first show you ever did?
Yeah, I mean, sort of what I was saying is that it was a big part of a need for me to like find a place where I could feel safe. Like I said, safe haven, and then a place that was through writing, and then performance. It was about validation and recognition and finding others. So out of a childhood where I struggled a bit because of my class and my race and my gender and my sexuality, all these things, coming into performance and writing gave me confidence, gave me community, and also, I should be honest, my mother is an artist. And so I was raised to really value the arts and to think about expressing myself that way. And I just had to find my own way to it. Mm-hmm. So I was influenced at a very young age.
By your mom?
By my mom,
by your surroundings as well, right?
Yeah.
So what was the first show you did?
Like a theater production?
Yeah. Whatever made you feel comfortable and, made you step out of your comfort zone.
Right. Well, so there's different phases, right? Yeah. So I started with performance poetry, and that was poetry slams in the early 2000s. And that was great. The first one I did that I traveled for outside of my home school. We went to the county, and it was like meeting all these other like kind of nerdy writer kids. And then some of them are really talented performers. And that was really exciting, again, finding community. I don't remember what I wrote about, so I can't tell you. But then my first theater production was actually in this really beautiful play. I was in my 20s, and it's called Bull Rusher. It was by Lisa Davis, who's an actress and writer still here in New York. Look her up, she's great. But it was shortlisted for the Pulitzer. And it's a story set in the 1950s about a mixed black, kind of queer, kind of an artist writer growing up in a small town surrounded by white people. And I was like, it's me! But it was set in the 1950s, and it had these magical components, and it was this incredible version of a kind of me that was so incredible to be able to step into through the magic of theater. And to, got written up in the newspaper and the San Francisco Chronicle and so on and so forth. And there was an incredible cast, and it was like, well, let's create this world, to be able to go from this experience that I have to creating this world for the public to see, to honor, to celebrate. That was really powerful.
I'm glad you found something like that.
Thank you.
Welcome. So it was really nice interviewing you for this session. Thank you.
Thank you for the time. Thanks for asking me.